to this HR Carnival of NIPM Kerala chapter, that is the National Institute of Personal Management Kerala chapter. We are indeed pleased to have you, Dr. Antonio, with us as part of the HR Carnival of NIPM Kerala chapter. The NIPM Kerala chapter has curated a HR Carnival running from March to June this year. And in the carnival, we have programs for the lady managers, the lady professionals, HR professionals. We have program for the young college students. We have programs for the corporates and the young managers. And we also have a program on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The first program is the Launch Her program, which showcases the achievements of women leaders. The second program, the Knowledge Hunt program, is basically a program for college students to get to know the industry best practices and to acquaint themselves with the industry, its functioning, and exhibit their understanding of what happens in these industries. We also have a business quiz for young corporate managers and college students. And we'll also be having a program highlighting the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the corporates in the present world scenario. So this, in short, is the HR Carnival that the NIPM Kerala chapter has curated for the next 2 or 3 months, starting from March to June this year. As a first step towards the carnival and as an intro to the carnival, we have with us Dr. Antonio. Over the last few years, we have been debating on the changes happening in the workplace. The changes, especially the growing number of remote workers, has been a challenge to managers all over. The requirement of the workers and their aspirations are changing. Therefore, new methods for managing the workforce is a necessity. This is one area where the relevance of behavioral science gathers importance as it attempts to understand human behavior to improve the quality of life. Behavioral science helps us to identify actions that influences people's interactions and their responses to situations. The COVID epidemic has brought in a lot of disruptive factors into play, and these have affected the workforce in general. It is therefore beneficial for all of us, especially the personal managers, to have a certain level of understanding of the behavioral changes that is happening in the workforce of today. To help us to understand the impact of this change on talent management and organizational advancement, we have an expert in behavioral science, Dr. Antonio, with us to share his thoughts on the same. I will just spare a few minutes, or probably a minute or so, to introduce Dr. Antonio to all of you. Dr. Antonio M. Espin is the co-founder and chief research officer at kodopeople. He is a PhD in behavioral economics and an expert in the application of behavioral science to human resources and talent management. His main expertise is in the assessment of behavioral traits of employees using state-of-the-art economic games. This is what kodopeople's SAS does. In addition, Dr. Antonio is the associate editor of the Journal of Behavioral and Experimental Economics and also the Journal of Behavioral Economics for Policy. He is also a board member of the Society for Advancement of Behavioral Economics and on the board of the Society for Advancement of Judgment and Decision-Making Studies. As an academic researcher, he is affiliated to the University of Granada, Spain, the Nottingham University in UK, and the Chapman University in USA. He has more than 50 scientific publications to his credit. This is a short introduction of Dr. Antonio, and I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Antonio into our midst. Welcome, Dr. Antonio.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay.
I
Thanks
also
a
welcome
lot.
my colleague, Anish Arvind, who himself is an accomplished trainer and consultant in the managerial field, to facilitate and complement the discussions with Dr. Antonio. Welcome, Anish.
Thank you,
I
Devaki sir.
welcome all the participants joining in for the session through various social media platforms and take this opportunity to remind our participants that the first major program of our HR Carnival is the Launcher program. And I take this opportunity to again request you all to help us get the maximum participation for the programs. Thank you all, and I hand over to Anish to lead Dr. Antonio towards the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Antonio, for actually joining us and taking time out. This is a very interesting topic. Let me not, without any further ado, let me just invite you on to uh, share your presentation, and let's go forward. And I'm looking forward to the conversation after this.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Okay.
very clear.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation and for the nice introduction.
It's our
Probably
honor.
too much for me. Well, I think I should start now. I'm here to talk, as you said, about behavioral science, in particular behavioral economics, but and more specifically about behavioral assessments and how behavioral economics has contributed or is contributing to this field, to behavioral assessment for talent acquisition and organizational advancement, not for HR and talent, basically. So yeah, let's start. We will see basically these points. I will start by introducing a little bit the field of behavioral economics for those who are not familiar with it. And then I will go through employee assessments in general, and of course, about um, behavioral economics assessments, which are based on our work hours, economic gains. Then I will show you some applications, real applications to the HR world of behavioral economics assessments, and then some conclusions. Then we will have some questions and answers and some conversation later. Okay, let's start. Well, what's behavioral economics? Behavioral economics is a subfield of economics that basically incorporates, is a multidisciplinary science, incorporates insights from different science, from psychology, probably the most important. Sometimes some people call it behavioral economics as economic psychology, but also sociology, anthropology, neuroscience, and other sciences. Uh, to what? Study human behavior. And we have been focused on observing and studying how people make choices. And for this, experiments have been very important. We, since the start of behavioral economics and experimental economics in the 80s, something like that, we started putting people to make decisions under controlled environments in the lab. Well, we created a lot of experimental or behavioral economics labs in the world and the different universities, and we started putting the students there to make choices and studying this under a controlled environment. We can say now, by now, that we're no longer a side science. We are including the mainstream of economics, and we even have some Nobel prizes in economics, like Daniel Kahneman, Bernard Smith, Richard Toller, and more people who are close to behavioral economics. So this is important. No, we are not, a boutique science, we are really inside the mainstream economic science. The What behavioral economics is come to say is that we have been using these experiments. We have observed that people, compared to the traditional economic theoretical prescriptions, which are based on rationality, people are biased, or they are they have deviations from these rational theoretical prescriptions. No, and these deviations can be classified through three groups. Basically, humans have willpower problems. Even if we have a goal, we sometimes cannot stick to our plans, and then we, especially in the long run, we have a present bias. Sometimes we make inconsistent intertemporal decisions because we are biased to the present, and we have self-control and willpower problems. The second group would be about our computational capacity. Even if we will be able to find a solution to a problem, to any problem in life, we have limited computational capacity, and then we need to use very often heuristics and automatic decisions, which are probably not so accurate, and are often not rational, but are quick and fast, and allow us to survive in the world. No? And the third one, the one that I've worked more on, is social behavior. People are not self-interested. We consider others people, wherefore we have other regarding preferences. Uh, we cooperate, we can be altruistic, we can be egalitarian, we have social preferences. And of course, for people outside economics, this might be quite obvious, no, especially the last point, no, or the three. But when in a science like economics that was so based on formal theory, based on rationality, it's been quite difficult to show that, for example, that people are not really self-interested. Why? Because just observing this in the street, just observing, for example, someone who is altruistic to another one, doesn't mean that this person is really uh, is not really trying to have a benefit in the future. You know, it's like, okay, we are altruistic because we want to have a benefit in the future. You know, for example, and this was and this through observation, this is always a possibility. But in our experiments, we show that the people who are in a lab, who are interacting with anonymous people that they will never find again, will never meet again. And so on, people still are altruistic and cooperate, no? And this is very important. And but of course, not all the people have the same deviations, or not all the people have the same present bias, or use the same type of heuristics, or are not identically self-interest, selfish, or cooperative, or whatever. And then um, economic gains that I will explain later on is what has been allowed us to see all the spectrum of different behavioral preferences, no, all choices. Uh, as a part of economics, as I said, behavioral economics is based on the framework of revealed preference, and this is very important. This is our core. Rather than using stated preferences and compared to what people state, what people they say, what we observe is what the people choose. What we infer the preferences of the people, their behavioral preferences, through their choices. So their choices reveal their preferences. No? Okay, so behavioral economics has come to say that humans are humans, but this, however stupid might sound, had helped us a lot in terms of research, and we have advanced a lot in the in understanding human, no, in human behavior, thanks to, you know, focusing more on irrationality than rationality, because humans are predictable irrational, and this is a very nice concept. Okay. Uh, Employee assessment. I'll talk about soft skill assessments and cognitive assessments. This is nothing new, in HR and talent. Employee assessment have been common at least in the 20 last years, and what was the goal? No, in research, that is my expertise. The goal of these assessments during the first time was to study which kind of traits, no, characteristic of people can predict job performance. No, we are always looking to improve productivity and so on, and then um, what researchers do is to assess people, then obtain a profile, and with this profile, with these variables, try to predict job performance, and to see, for example, at the beginning was basically focused on cognitive abilities. Why? Because it's quite has been quite demonstrated that people who are smarter tend to produce more. No? A newer perspective have been in personality traits. And there's also a lot of work showing that some personality traits can predict performance. No? This basically, during almost 30 years of study, always consciousness has been led. The personality trait that was the best predictor of performance, but this has changed a lot. Okay, this says we are not there. We Okay, as I said, no, we correlate, or researchers correlate the assessment results with business KPIs. No, can be performance, as I said before, but can be engagement, can be turnover, can be absenteeism, happiness, and job satisfaction, whatever. To see which are the predictors. Then, and this can be applied to, for example, to recruitment. Probably one of the easiest to understand applications, no? To place the right people in the right position. If you know which characteristics are predictive of a particular KPI in a particular position, then hire people with these characteristics, and then you can ensure with some probability that your performance will increase. Also, have been used for what we call perfect matching, not to fit the firm, to fit the team, or to fit the boss. That this doesn't need to mean to be identical to the boss or identical to the team. That could be, for example, to be complementary. Imagine you have a team with some key characteristics, and you need someone with the opposite characteristic to balance, for example. No, but matching. Of course, and this is very important nowadays for talent retention. This is key. If you have the people working on what they are more productive, they are matched with the right team and so on, then people will be happier, and then you will retain talent. And uh, when I was doing no after I did my PhD, I was doing academic research. I was not focused on HR. I started to think about this, no, and I said, why behavioral economics is not there? I'm talking about 2016, more or less, no. So 6, 7 years ago. Why? Because behavioral economics also have assessments of soft skills or behavioral skills, behavioral traits that can do the same job, no? Can try to be used to predict performance and the same uses, no, as other assessments. And then I decided to write what is nowadays the first paper on the topic, the first academic article, no? That we published with Francisco Reyes, who is also the co-founder of kodopeople, and Luis Sirias, a neuropsychologist from Granada. And we wrote this paper trying to show the potential of our games, or with the experimental tools using in behavioral economics, to infer, to study people's tastes and inclinations, no, and behavioral tastes, behavioral dispositions. And in this paper, what we try to say is, okay, behavioral economics is increasingly being applied in organizations for mechanism design, for more things, incentive architecture, and so on, to understand. But these tools had not been, the HR departments were not impacted by behavioral economics, and we thought that one clear path would be through economic games, through assessments. Why? Because interventions, for example, a particular incentive architecture that you design, taking into account the knowledge from behavioral economics, we know that doesn't apply identical to different people. For example, so we know that some interventions are even can be very positive for long run oriented people, for example, for patient people, but can be even
Mhm.
counterproductive for short run oriented people. So please first assess the people you're going to intervene. No, then we provided one of the first example of, we were starting in that time, and this is in 2017. We published it in the Journal of Behavioral Economics for Policy, and we were starting at that time doing consulting projects, research consulting projects, exactly doing what I said before, trying to correlate and to find the behavioral predictors of performance and the different effects on different people of interventions.
Got it.
Okay, but behavioral economics, of course, they also have limitations. I'm talking about research. To do a research in a company to extract these predictors, you have the participation problem. This is common to all assessments. No, what you cannot force your employees to do the assessment. Normally, you have self-selection issues. There are some fraction of the workforce that don't come or don't participate in the assessment, and then you have a sample that is reduced, that is not representative, and you should know how to treat this statistically properly to find the right predictors or the right result. And this is, of course, compared to any other research, to any other, survey, whatever that you participated and a person participates. The key difference here is that you feel observed by the boss. Then there is what we in behavioral economics call demand effect. You try to choose or to say what you expect your boss expects from you, no? And this has also implications. But behavioral economic measurements offer a number of advantages compared to, for example, self-reported questionnaires. No? Control. First, we can systematically assess preferences that normally are classified also into three groups: over risk or uncertainty, time or self-control, and social behavior, no, and decisions about others. So we can assess the preferences, keeping a lot of control over external factors. Uh, we can classify people, and even though because we are using models from game theory that are based on mathematical parameters, and then even if we measure the behavior of the people, the behavioral traits as a continuum, depending on the parameters, we can be talking about someone who is risk averse versus someone who is risk loving, what we call risk loving, or risk neutral, even or between someone who is in present bias or not, for example. Well, and this is important. It's not it's not an scaling with someone who say is more risk averse than others. Is that based on the choices of the people, we can extract, infer these parameters, and these parameters have a lot of meaning. No, you can be present bias or not, you can be risk averse or not, and this is very powerful. For us, probably this is the main difference with respect to our previous work in psychology. Uh, from It's a science, of course, from which we get a lot of input, is that we analyze real behavior. We observe people making real choices with real consequences. It is called incentive compatibility.
Mhm.
And this revealed, since the people make choices over real consequences, then this revealed their true preferences. And finally, our values, because of the same reason of being based on mathematical parameters, are fairly comparable between individuals. Um, Even a Likert scale, for example, if you are asked, "Are you a trustful person?" I don't know, in a questionnaire, and you have to answer between, from disagree to agree in a Likert scale from 1 to 7, whatever. Someone who says or who answers a 6 doesn't mean that this person is more trustful than someone who answered a 5.
Okay.
There's some probability, but not always the same, because not all the person have the same scale in their minds. In our case, this doesn't happen because our parameters are not in the mind of the person, are behind the choices.
Um,
So we can perfectly compare. For example, I can say that Anish or whoever has a risk aversion parameter of 0.99 and another person has a risk aversion parameter of 0.95. Then the difference is important. Okay. And uh, also a key point that allows us to compare between people is using choices over money. Money is something that satisfy all the the needs, the requirements for this. Why? Because everyone understand money. Everyone prefers more money than less, which is called monotonicity, but it doesn't happen in everything, in all goods. And everyone know the value of money, at least, in purchase power. Okay. So as I said, as our workhorses, the economic game is. An economic game is a game where people make choices with real monetary
yeah,
consequences.
very interesting.
And we infer the preferences of the individual from the choices, not from what they state. I'm trying to wrap up a little bit here. So their choices reveal their preferences. Uh, and since economic games are using somewhat abstract scenarios, they avoid subjectivity. Like as I said before, not the scale is not in the mind of the person, and then we go to the origin of choice to try to extract the preference, the mathematical formula that explain that choice. Okay. And this is a very important advantage that respondents can't easily link the decision they make to specific situations. For example, if you ask someone if it's a risk-averse person and this person normally, I know, loves climbing, for example, he can think that he or she is not risk-averse, is a risky person. But the context matter a lot, and probably this person is not risky or is a little bit risk-averse, but all his or her friends love climbing, and that's why he's doing it. So we don't ask about are you risk averse or not. We put people to make choices in a context-free economic game. No? So that's why responses are very objective and not dependent on concrete experience. But games require real incentives. Otherwise, we'll be doing cheap talk and not eliciting the true preferences. And due to all these characteristics, compare, for example, to self-report questionnaires, behavioral assessment techniques are very difficult to be manipulated by the respondent
Yeah.
because it's very difficult to know what the game is measuring. And, for example, sometimes people try to look as a cooperative person, but our games, mm, for example, later on in the report, they say they see themselves as, for example, altruistic, or that is not the same as cooperative, or an equitable person, or whatever. No, so it's very difficult for the people to know what we are measuring. Okay, so I will give you some examples. No,
Great.
for example, in the three same categories of uncertainty, risk, and social preferences. Sorry, uncertainty, risk, which is the same, and then time and social preference. About risk, how we measure risk preference, risk aversion. We put people to make this decision. For example, this is of course very simplified. No, Do you prefer 100 for sure or $200 with tossing a coin, and then if it's tails you get 200, and if it's heads you get zero? No, then someone choosing the 100 for sure is more risk averse than someone choosing the option, the risky option.
Mm.
For time preference, to see whether someone is more short run or long run oriented, we put them to make intertemporal decisions. Do you prefer to receive $100 today or 104 in 1 month? No, and we make a lot of the choices like this. Of course, it's not only one. And one example of social preferences, probably social preferences is the in which we have more games and more kind of preferences. But for example, here to measure egalitarianism, for example, do you prefer 200 for you, or normally this starts something like, okay, you are paired with an anonymous person that you will never meet. Then and we give you $200. Do you prefer to keep the 200 for you or to split it evenly with your partner? Then if you choose the 200 for you, then you are more self-interested than if you choose to split it. You got the point, I think.
Got
Okay, I will put a very easy sample of how an economic game works. Imagine this. This is not okay. This is about cars and wheels, but it's the same. What I try to say here is that preferences over risk, over time, or social preference are very similar or are not different from preference for any other thing. Everything has a price. So let's see. Imagine we give Martha $200, and then
it.
let's focus here in the top part, which is the well-designed decision. Here is the bad-designed decision. Let's focus here, and we put her to make a decision. She has to choose between car A and car B. Okay, and car A and B are identical, but the wheels have different colors, and both cars have the same price. Okay, if Martha chooses car B, we can infer that she prefers black wheels because it's the only difference between the two cars.
Mhm.
In a second stage, now, since we know she prefers car B, now, but they have the same price, now we increase the cost of car B.
Got it.
And now car B costs, for example, 110. If Martha still chooses car B, it on the one hand
Got
validates her preference for black wheels.
it.
He's paying, but we also by increasing recursively the price of car B, we can measure exactly the indifference point. We call indifference point how much Martha values black wheels versus white wheels. No, at some
Mm.
point, okay, for $10 she still prefers car B. At some point she said, no, car
Mm.
A. For example, in 150, she said, okay, I love the black cars, but this is too much. No? Then we do the same with the games. Imagine risk in this first one here. Imagine if the person chooses this for sure, then we offer her 220 with 50 probability. No, and then we increase recursively the price of risk aversion. Is the same.
Got it.
So everything has a price, and this is what we do. No, a by design decision, for example, would be having different cars with different color and different wheel colors. No, then
Mm.
if Martha chooses car B, for example, we cannot infer whether she prefer black wheels or it's the yellow color what she prefers.
Got it.
Okay, I'll run a little bit and okay. Of course, paying people is very costly. But now, since in the last 6, 7 years, we have been researching a lot on whether we can use a kind of probabilistic reward. And a probabilistic reward basically means that not everyone will be paid, and not every decision will be paid. So one out of every 10 people, 100 people, whatever, will receive money from one randomly selected decision. No? So, and everyone knows in advance all these rules, and then they make the decisions knowing that they can be paid. Of course, this reduces a lot the budget, no? And it has been demonstrated that the results are super valid, even if we don't pay everyone, because people still think carefully about the things. And nowadays, that compared when the time I started, the smartphone apps can be used for payment, keeping protecting
Yeah.
personal data, and so on. And this is a very good advance. Huh? In terms of more technical stuff, there's not yet meta-analytical evidence, but there are a lot of individual studies showing that this measure predict outdoor behavior. Uh, and this is based in the demonstrated fact that the past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. Since we measure behavior directly, we are not inferring a construct or a behavior using different self-reported questions or whatever. We are measuring the behavior directly. That's why validity here is a slippery term. It's not clear whether we have to show these games are valid because they are measuring exactly what they say they are measuring.
Right there.
Why I should show that a game measuring risk aversion is able to predict risk aversion is, of course, is because the game is measuring that, no? And that's why nowadays games are used to validate survey questions. For example, Gallup, they have uh, some questionnaires to measure risk aversion and so on, time preference. But these questionnaires have been, that are not incentivized, that are not paid, have been validated using games. Since the responses to these questions are able to more or less predict choices in the games, they are considered validated. So we don't need to show validity because we are valid by ourselves. And in terms of reliability, um, which is the key point is the test retest stability. I mean, the people who are measured now and they are risk averse today, if they are assessed again in 1 year with, of course, some error, they still have a very similar preference. So these measurements are stable and stable in the range of personality traits. So this is very stable. So someone who is inequity averse, in 1 year, most likely he will be also. Okay, an example here of the difference between a self-reported assessment and economic gain. No, let's see. For example, to measure trust, here on the left-hand side part, we have a typical question in the questionnaire. Does this statement define you? Uh, and the statement is, I'm a person who generally trusts others. Okay, then you have to choose between yes or not, or between totally agree to disagree, whatever. No? An economic game will be very different and would be something like this. This is, of course, very simplified, no? But you get the point. You are paired with an anonymous peer, and you have to choose between two options. Option A means that both of you will earn 100, so in total 200. No. Option B means if you choose option B, you pass the choice to your peer that you don't know. It's an anonymous person, and have to choose between two options as well. Either both of you earn 200, which is double than option A, or she keeps everything. She keeps 400 because the money is double
Mhm.
to encourage trust, and you earn zero. Then, if she keeps everything, she's demonstrated that she is not trustworthy, and you lose all your money if you choose option B. Option B is putting you in the hands of another person, which is exactly the definition of trust. If you choose
Got it.
option B, you are risking losing all your money because you think the other person is with some probability trustworthy. Okay, of course, this is very simplified. And again, we will recursively increase, for example, the price of trusting. If you choose to trust, then you say, okay,
Um,
what if so different scenarios, no?
Got it.
Okay,
Well
let's go.
explained.
Let's go. Thank you very quickly to practical applications.
Wonderful.
Of course, as any assessment, you can use it to compare departments in your organization, to compare locations, to compare management levels, teams, so on. Basically, to know your people. But this information, even for experts, is limited because okay, I know that my people is on average whatever. the important point here is to know which behavioral profiles are the best for your organization, for your position, for a specific situation. If and for that you need data and previous knowledge. You need to do the research that we have been doing during the last 5, 6 years, or you can use our software. No, kodopeople, and try not to be very commercial, but in kodopeople, what we did is to integrate all this knowledge in a very solid and very easy to use software, which already gives you actionable insights, who to hire, who to promote, and so on. So, how we arrive here, the research that allows us to have this product. I will show you very quickly two examples. I think that they are very
That'd be great.
representative, and I'll try to finish them. Sorry.
Wonderful.
The first one, real application to agile teams in the IT sectors. Okay, agile teams is this methodology which is very common in the IT. Um,
Yes.
Small autonomous groups. Okay, which
Got it.
um, and what the project was about was to uncover the measures that the behavioral traits that can predict team performance, squad performance. No? The agile teams are called squads. And why? Because the client at that time, that is Nokia Communications. Now we can say that because we have been unable to. We had an embargo. We could not say it, but nowadays we can say it was
Oh,
Nokia,
oh, wonderful.
and they had quite good. They said they were not so interested in the individual performance. They were interested in team performance. That sometimes is not the same as the sum of individual performance. No?
Yeah, true.
So we were working with them in a very large European center
Mm-hmm.
with almost 100 squads of 10 to 20 people. Okay, and we assessed them to find these predictors. Okay. The company, the HR leaders of the company wanted to do data-driven decisions about how performance-based incentives should be defined and how people should be allocated into teams in order to maximize performance. This is normally the standard. No?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this I think this is very interesting for you as HR people. We did a survey to the HR leaders of Nokia, and we asked them their predictions, their expectations of what behavioral mix should be the perfect mix for a squad. And I will focus only in the streams. They said, and we didn't have these results until the end of the research. And this is very important because that is related with with our results. Okay, they thought that they shouldn't be risk averse, they shouldn't be loss averse, and they shouldn't be envious. Okay, and in the positive stream, they thought that in order to have a good performance, squads should be long run oriented, to be focused in the future, not in the present, and cooperative. Okay,
Okay.
remember that.
Okay.
Okay, we did assessment. We tried to assess all the 1,700 people. We were unable to assess more than that. We were able to assess 400 people. And they participated in an online assessment using our platform, which is called Behavioural Diagnosis, which is our platform to make ad hoc consulting projects. Then the participation rate was 25%. So the participation problem. This
Mm.
is
Great.
always happening. You have to, and this has a lot of implications, and you need to know a lot of statistics, econometrics to consider this. And then because of this, we studied the measure that after being averaged across squad members, better predicting performance. If we had all the people assessed, we can also study the combination of profiles that increase performance. But since we didn't have everyone assessed, only 25%, we need to focus only in the average behavioral trait of the squad
Okay.
and give different weights in the statistical analysis to the different squads. Squads
Exactly.
with low participation, low weight, squads with high participation, high weight. What we found, uh, well, that squads with more long run oriented, more patient members were more productive. These are the squads. The larger the circle, the more participation rate. Anyway, so the variance explained is 10%. So 10% of all the factors that can explain that a squad performs better than other is only based on one factor, long run orientation. So 10% of everything can be explained with only one factor, which is a lot. And this coincides with a paper of mine that, of course, made me very happy. Um, because we found in a classroom experiment that the groups were more productive when the groups had very patient people. The second variable that we found, cooperativeness. For the groups in which people are more cooperative, they were also more productive. A little bit less strong, is 6%, but still significant and robust. So with this, and this is what we always do, we build an algorithm in which we have squads with more long-run oriented and more cooperative members display higher KPIs. And this algorithm basically is a combination of the average long-run orientation and the average in a mathematical formula, the average in cooperation. Recall what HR leaders expected. They expected that a good squad should be long-run oriented and cooperative, so they were right, and this is good. Okay. The second case, very quickly, just about online productivity, individual productivity. What are the behavioral predictors of online productivity? This was the research, and whether they differ whether the employee is working remotely, hybrid, or on site. As I said, as we know, we can measure behavioral traits, but we need someone to measure productivity, online productivity. Online productivity means online in cloud-based application. How many emails you send, how many time you spend in the chat with your colleagues, so on. ProduScore is a company in the US that does a great job in measuring online productivity. And we did this research with ProduScore and with Lighthouse Institute with Ben Eubanks. Probably you know him.
Yes, yes, he's a friend of mine.
Okay. So we analyzed we had productivity data from 300 employees from different companies that were clients of ProduScore. And this is very powerful because we had daily productivity of these 300 people, and productivity is a score, product score points from 0 to 100, 0 very poor product performance, 100 perfect performance. And we had 18 months of performance of each person. This is
18
very
months.
powerful because we have daily productivity for everyone, and this makes that the statistics are much more powerful.
Oh.
Okay, and then we knew at what time of these 18 months they were working remotely, hybrid, or in presence. And many of them were switching, and we know in which week they were hybrid or remotely. So. And then we measured with an assessment. Most of them completed, it's not participated, not sorry, is completed the assessment, 70% of them, which is a lot, but still the participation problem. We did multi-level regression, okay, as we always do. We don't use simple correlations, we use multi-level regressions. And we found six behavioral variables that were significant predictors for at least one work modality. And we created, as always we do, is an algorithm to predict performance in remote, performance in hybrid, and performance in presence. Okay, and then I will just show you that according to their estimations, having a behavioral assessment that allows hiring people with above median is not even the stream. Just being able to have an assessment that can, using the algorithm, have differentiate between people with above median predicted productivity versus below median. So you get the 50% with higher predicted productivity. This is associated with between 2K and 5K dollar savings per year per employee, an employee with 60K salary, which is a lot. And it's only being able to differentiate between the top and the bottom half. No? But the work modality matters a lot. The predictors are not the same, not at all. Someone performing well remotely, probably you all know that, but you have to, Someone having the right behaviors and performing well remotely may perform very bad on site. And just to conclude, okay, as I said, public when I started in this endeavor, public and private organizations were increasingly applying behavioral economic methods for a variety of use of issues, mechanism design and incentive architecture and so on. But the assessment of people using our experimental methods were unexplored. Um, this is very important. There shouldn't be intervention on HR on people without measuring first how people behave, because different people react different to different interventions. And if possible, do an A/B testing or an RCT, randomized control trial, to
Mm.
check whether your intervention is working in, for example, half of your workforce before extending it to the whole organization. So you check,
Ah,
you do the research, you do a particular intervention in a random sample of your people, and then if this works after some months, then you extend it to the whole
the
organization. This is
bigger
very
problem.
powerful. Not always clients want to do that. This is very common.
Mm.
People are against experiments. It's like, oh, I cannot put half of my people doing something, and well,
Yes.
this is how scientists do things. Economic gains are a powerful instrument to complement cognitive and personality assessment. We don't want to substitute anyone. I think even if they are the gold standard in academic research, I like to show. I didn't show it today, but in academic research in the last 20 years, if you want to measure, for example, cooperation, and you want to publish the paper, you should use an economic gain. Otherwise, no editor, no referee will trust your results. A questionnaire, someone saying, okay, I'm cooperative, is not trustful. So it's very important. The gold standard in academic research on behavior, economic gains. And as I said, yeah, and just this is the end. Economic gains measure behavioral traits, and behavioral traits we have been demonstrated during 5 years of research that can predict job performance at both the individual and the team level. And what we did in kodopeople was to integrate all this previous knowledge to democratize the use of behavioral economics assessments in the HR world. Thank you very much, and sorry for the delay. I'm late. Thank you very much.
No problem. I think you really thank you for taking us through, and some of those examples that you used really threw more light and on the process itself. So I have a few questions to start off. I'm requesting also the viewers to put in their questions as comments. I know there is someone
Oh.
that's come in already, but I'm curious to know what got you into this particular stream of study. And I've personally been following this from 2002 onwards. That's when Daniel Kahneman got the Nobel Prize. And I know it is
Exactly.
about 15 or 10 years before that the actual study would have happened. So we're talking about 80s or early 90s.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was doing a PhD in economics. I was doing the undergraduate in economics, and I started the PhD. And then one of the, of the fields to finish the PhD was behavioral economics. I didn't know much about this,
Uh-huh.
but the professor Pablo Brañas Garza, who was uh, my supervisor, my PhD supervisor, really convinced me that this was the future. I'm talking about 15 years ago, or a little bit more. And then I decided to go to do experiments and to understand how human behave, and and here I am.
Okay, wonderful. Um, I think it was the what do you mean when you say unbiased
Mm.
behavioral assessments? Can you explain that part of it?
Yeah, we often use that terminology. No, we say that they are unbiased behavioral assessments because there are other behavioral assessments that are more biased in the sense that are more subjective and are based on the perception of the respondent. In our case, as I said, we are using these abstract context-free scenarios in which, since you cannot manipulate and you cannot infer what they are measuring, people put in the mindset in which they try to just to maximize the utility. That could be money, but could be anything. And then they say, okay, I'm doing some games here about money, and then that's why, compared to a questionnaire, we say that this is unbiased behavioral assessment that allow you to do unbiased decisions on people. No, people probably, I cannot think of nothing more important in an organization that decision on people. No, and then it's better if you use the best tools, because assessment of soft skills or behaviors or whatever. Some years ago, what a nice to have thing, something to talk with your to talk about with your people. No, you do an assessment and then you talk with your people about how they are and so on. This has changed. Soft skills are more important than ever. Adaptability, this kind of uncertainty management. These are key skills, and then you need to use the best tools and ask for advice, and if possible to scientists. Because there are solutions, for example, in personality traits that we are not in that field, but there are solutions measuring personality traits as scientists do, for
Mm.
example, using the big five of the Exaco, but others are using their own assessment that are not validated and not supported by,
Yeah.
by science. And still they are selling millions of assessment every year.
Yes.
So please just try to do a little research or ask experts that are a
Mm.
lot around the world, and to use the best tools, because wrong
Absolutely.
decisions of people are probably the
Too
worst
many
thing you can
things
do.
are at stake. So one particular piece on this is how can one approach identifying and addressing behavioral biases within an organization's HR policies and procedures?
Sorry, could you say again?
Yeah, how do we assess or how do you approach identifying and
Mhm,
addressing biases within a
mhm,
HR? I mean HR policies and procedures of an organization.
mhm. Well, we have focused on using the games, using the online assessments. There are many ways of doing it, but for example, in the first assessment of sorry about this, of color people that measures, it's a screening that gives you a screening index to keep the people who are better prepared. We basically, what we measure implicitly is that we try to keep is the people who is less behavioral biases. So the people who have less self-control problems, less, these kind of things, because this is exactly what we are. We try not to talk about cognitive biases or so on,
Uh,
but it's implicit there in the assessment, that if you want to hire, it's not always the case, okay, but if we want to hire someone, for example, who is very loss averse, and you were talking about Daniel Kahneman. Now, loss aversion was the creation of Daniel Kahneman. His
yeah.
experiment demonstrated that people are not only risk averse, are loss averse, which is different, but people who are very loss averse, they make very bad decisions in life. And then in your organization, it's better not to have them. These kind of things. No?
Okay, there was a question from a LinkedIn user that is, can behavioral economics tell us when a bias will actually occur and how does it unfold over time? Is that
When a bias will actually occur? Well, we are continuously doing bias decisions. For example, one typical bias is in-group bias. But there are many, but mm, even if I am a cooperative person, with the people I hate or the people of other group, I'm not that cooperative. So this is an in-group bias. I prefer to cooperate with my in-group. That not everyone is biased again, no, but some people are biased, and some people are very biased, and they only cooperate with their people, and they can be even spiteful with people or other groups,
mm,
competitors, or so on. So
okay.
in many cases, there are many ways in which bias at fault. They are all the day we are doing biased choices because our perceptions.
Yeah, I have some more questions, but I think in the interest of time, let me ask a very forward-looking and a very exciting thing which I've been following. Uh, how can we get the industry to use more behavioral economics and more science-based approaches to HR, like what they use for marketing and other. This has been a
Yeah.
kind of a thing for me always. I've seen. I think marketing gets a lot of attention, and of course, there's and if they and these are much longer term impacts that we can create. So, can there be some tools that behavioral economics can itself employ to create nudges so the industry uses more of these tools? And that's
Yeah, a tool to help to use another tool, no? Yeah, what I found in the HR world is that the people are super, people centric, are not normally, data is sometimes considered to be this personalizing the person. No, it's like, okay, this is not this is not a number, it's a person, because you as HR pros, you are very focused on people, you love people, no? And then but for me, it's precisely because of loving people is why you should be objective. To be fair with people, you would need to be objective, and there's nothing more objective than science and numbers.
absolutely.
It's sometimes could be sad, yes, but it's much more unfair your subjective perception than any objective evaluation based on numbers.
Yeah.
So probably this should be the future. No, people should be changing a little bit their mind and think this very carefully. To be fair with your people, you should use fair, objective measures, and your mind is not objective at all, is biased. And sometimes we are biased by stupid things like your eyes, even I don't know, it's unconscious, your eyes are very similar to the eyes of someone who kicked me 1 year ago, and then I don't like you, I don't know why, but for the same interview, we have done this many times, these experiments, for the same, even the same resume, whatever, we put a picture and a different picture in the same resume, and then the assessment of someone is different, just for the picture, just for the race, the ethnicity or the color, these kind of things. The gender is very important. This has been demonstrated tons of times. Same resume with a female name versus the same resume
Mm.
with a male name. The male name get more interviews
Okay.
in general.
So, thanks for explaining that, and Dr. Antonio. So, one part more is so, which are the companies whom you explained Nokia's approach slightly earlier? Which are the other companies, known names that have been using these assessments or behavioral economics approaches in Europe or parts where you've been?
Well, here, for example, we have BBVA, the bank, BBVA, which is a very
The
large
bank.
bank, Banco Santander as well. In banking is quite, behavioral economics comes there, but not in HR. Not okay. We have been working with Banco Santander for a little bit, but this is not so common. In terms of research, of all the research we did before building the product, because we have other clients, of course. But for that research, we use, for example, we worked with Mundi Pharma, Banco Santander, Nokia Communications, Comdata, Correos España, which is the public post here. So yeah, normally with large companies that were able to, because these were large projects, projects that were expensive, very expensive, and the big difference between Behave for consulting and kodopeople product is that Behave for was very expensive, but it was super accurate, 99%, and kodopeople is super cheap, and the accuracy is 90%, but it's a lot.
Wow. No,
But
90% is
it's
a lot. We are looking at
yeah.
maybe 20, 30, or less than 50% in most of the assessments and that. So anything above 75% is quite.
Exactly, exactly. We are trying
So
to
I
work
know
with standards,
you.
scientific standards.
So I think in the interest of time, and I think we'll call it a day now. And I know you've just scratched the surface of this whole subject, and kind of introduced us to an exciting journey. So we are really looking forward to maybe staying connected and with the chapter, and Joe sir is already also here. So we'll try
For
and see
sure.
how we can take this forward in various parts, and maybe take it across to various parts of the country as well, through our thing. So really excited to and honored to have you here as thing. So over to Joe
Mm,
sir.
honor is mine. Honor is mine. My pleasure.
Thanks. I really enjoyed the conversation. Looking forward to the viewers. If you can have more, another request, Dr. Antonio, if you can maybe spend some time answering the queries, because we have to end the session now. Maybe on LinkedIn we can continue the conversation. And
Yeah, yeah. I'm open to answer any question. If you connect me in LinkedIn, I always accept. I've never say no to anyone in LinkedIn. So uh, please just jump with your questions, and I will be happy to. Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Over to you, Joseph.
Okay.
You're on mute, I guess.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anish.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And thanks a lot, Dr. Antonio, for briefing us, for taking us through this exciting topic of behavioral economics. I think it's a relatively new topic as far as most of us are concerned. And like Anish said, we're looking forward to your science coming into the HR field also.
Sure, we
I'm
need
sure,
to push.
yeah, I'm sure it's an eye opener for a lot of HR people out here. And in a sense, it'll definitely be uh, something good for the behavioral scientists also. Now, Ajesh, would you like to say something and extend our thanks to Dr. Antonio?
There you are.
Yeah, you are.
You're on mute, Ajish.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. It was a wonderful session. Thank you, Anish. Thank you,
Our
Suchu
pleasure.
Waki. Thank you, Antonio. Thank
My
you
pleasure.
all. Thank you, viewers. See you again next edition. Thank you.
Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you
Thanks
very
a lot.
much.